Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. While many Canadians were glued to the Stanley Cup final, there was another down-to-the-wire finish happening across the country. This one, a stunning upset. The federal Conservatives won a by-election in the riding of Toronto-St. Paul's. It is a seat the Liberals have held for 3 decades. The Liberal candidate was just slightly ahead in the count until the last ballot box came in at around 4:40 this morning Eastern Time. Stephanie Levitz is the Toronto Star's Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief. Steph, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
How did this race go down?
It went down in spectacular fashion. So many factors at play here, Matt, shifting the results around all night. I mean, one of the reasons they took so long is that there were dozens upon dozens of names on this ballot, part of a protest movement about our first past the post system.
So that's why the ballot was like a meter long?
Exactly right. It folded up like a map. And as it was coming out of the ballot boxes, the counters had to run through 84, I think it was, names to sort of figure out who had cast a vote for which candidate, which is the thing that slowed down the process. And that's what took us, into the wee hours of the morning, watching the votes count and then spectacularly flip the riding from red to blue in very early this morning.
Don Stewart of the Conservatives beats Leslie Church of the Liberals by just a few hundred votes. People have used any number of words to describe this. Seismic, shocking, stunning. What word would you use to describe the result?
Calculated.
Calculated?
I would use the term calculated. And the reason I say that, Matt, is that, the Conservatives were setting expectations really low for them to be able to flip this riding, right? As you mentioned in the intro, it's been Liberal for 3 decades. But on the other hand, the Conservatives have been actively trying to win this riding since February. I mean, they nominated their candidates super early. They'd been knocking on doors. They'd been holding rallies. They'd been, getting as much support as they could. They'd been hoovering up names of volunteers, supporters. They were working this one. And, in as much as they were sending signals, oh, we're not going to win it. Oh, the whole drive here really is just send a message that Trudeau's support isn't what it used to be in places like this. I don't think winning it was ever really something they didn't think they could do.
So by-elections, people will say, are often a referendum on the incumbent government, and they can be determined by a couple of things. One is apathy, that supporters of that incumbent government may not feel like they need to come out, or even the people who are opposed to it, because it's a by-election and it's not, the big main vote. At the same time, you can also have a motivated voter base. So why do you think this result, aside from the calculations that you ran through, why do you think this result came out the way that it did?
You can look at a bunch of things. You can absolutely look at the strength of the get out the vote effort on the part of the Conservative Party. You can look at disaffection and distaste with the Justin Trudeau government. You can look at the inability of the New Democrats to make any gains here. Once again, we have to wonder what has happened to the progressive vote in this country. If they are turning away from Justin Trudeau, as the national polls would suggest, why aren't they parking their votes with the New Democrats? The NDP, which holds this riding provincially, really didn't do very well in this by-election. You have to wonder about that. You can look to specific, existent issues at play in the riding that are going to perhaps motivate voters at this moment in time in a way that they might not be motivated on the issue come the by-election. I think one of the salient things is, in Toronto, St. Paul's, there's a decent-sized Jewish community feeling really under attack. The rise of anti-Semitism in Toronto right now is at record levels. They're feeling abandoned by their government. And there was an active campaign here to convince Jewish voters in particular to send a message to Justin Trudeau to say that, hey, you do not have our interests at heart. So, all sorts of micro issues playing out in a major way in this by-election.
So what does it mean? This is a riding that the Liberals have held for 3 decades. Again, people will say by-elections are by-elections. You cannot predict the future based on what comes out of a by-election. But a lot of people started doing that at 4:40 this morning and will continue doing that in the hours following. What do you think it means?
David Coletto has he's the CEO of Abacus Data, he's a pollster, and he has a pretty good rundown out this morning, sort of trying to discredit that idea that by-elections don't matter. And he looks at how by-elections previous held previously to other general elections have actually signaled the coming shift in the electorate, even if, the riding didn't flip hands as it did in this case. Certainly, this is a moment for introspection for the Liberal Party. Certainly, if you are a Liberal MP in Fortress Toronto, which, the 416, which the Liberals, usually have a really strong lock on, you're looking around and wondering, okay, is my seat not safe? And what does that mean for me? At some point, do you put your own personal self-interest as a Liberal member of Parliament ahead of sort of loyalty to the party, loyalty to the boss, and decide, hey, I want to win? So I wonder, is this the moment in time that a lot of political watchers have been waiting for, where the grumbles about Justin Trudeau start to have names attached to them, which is to say, this is not anonymous backbench Liberals complaining. We start to see senior named Liberals saying, okay, boss, it's time to have a conversation about your future.
In political discourse, that's called the knives coming out. Do you expect that to happen?
If they're not, they're already out, right? The question is whether or not they get sharp enough to stab him in the back. Let's just torture the metaphor to death. Why don't we? I think that they are already out. I think that, Chrystia Freeland said something on the eve of this by-election that is dangerous, a dangerous narrative for the Liberals. She referred to people who support the Conservative movement, I believe, as being cold and small and cruel. That is a dangerous line of thinking from the Liberal Party. If they are just going to outhand dismiss the portion of the population that is clearly voting and saying, we want change, we do not like what you're selling, and the support that they're parking, they're dismissing as cold, cruel, and mean, that's dangerous for the Liberals, and they probably need to have a think about how they take on the Conservatives going forward.
What about, you referred to the boss. The boss is Justin Trudeau. He is the Prime Minister, the leader of the party. He has consistently said on this program and elsewhere that he is staying. His father famously went for a walk in the snow and determined that he wanted a change in employment and wanted out of that job. Does a result like this suggest, the pressure has been relentless on Justin Trudeau, but could he go for, you go for a walk in the shade this summer? Can he survive something like this?
That's going to be up to him, ultimately.
It really is. Ultimately, it's up to him.
Yeah, ultimately, it'll be his choice at the end of the day. And the question is, if he chooses to stay, what do the people around him do? Do they rally behind him, or do they throw up their hands and say, well, I don't like this, I quit? Which is possible, right? And then it forces his hand. I guess my point is, it's up to him until it isn't up to him anymore.
What do the Conservatives take from this?
The Conservatives take that, it is possible for them to win seats in the 416. The Conservatives can take modeling on this vote that suggests they could win other seats in the 416. The Conservatives take that under Pierre Poilievre, some investments that they are making into get out the vote, into reshaping the party apparatus, the mechanics of how they do this are paying off for them. That their disciplined messaging to a degree is working, which is to say that they are, not promising all things to all people. You watched Jon Stewart give a speech last night, and he recited, without even blinking, sort of the 4 current tenets of the Conservative platform, right? All of those things are working for them. And I believe, they have set out to build a new voting consensus in this country made up of people who do not traditionally vote Conservative. And in this by-election, it shows that those efforts for them look to be paying off. The
belief among some is that the Conservatives would rather run against Justin Trudeau than another Liberal. Is there any truth to that, do you think?
They've invested a lot of time, energy, money, in fact, in blaming every single thing that is currently going wrong in this country with Justin Trudeau. Like, somebody else smarter than me, made a point that at this point, if your dog ran off and got lost in the woods, they'd find a way to blame that on Justin Trudeau. And the question then becomes, if you lose your boogeyman, what happens? What happens to that messaging? To whom do you ascribe blame? What's funny about that, if you think about it, the reverse, is that the Trudeau Liberals invoke former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper all the time. And they're forever trying to link Pierre Poilievre to Stephen Harper. Now, granted, Pierre Poilievre was part of the Harper government. So can the Conservatives sort of twist that argument around if they've got a new Liberal leader? Well, you sat in Justin Trudeau's cabinet and did nothing X, Y, Z, right? But I think it will be a hurt to them insofar as they've really wrapped everything up into Justin Trudeau.
Just in the last minute or so that we have, when he was on Power and Politics last week, the Prime Minister told the CBC's David Cochrane that people aren't in decision mode yet. In the wake of this, do you think there's still room for the parties to change a narrative before the next election, whenever that happens to be?
Well, he clearly forgot about the folks in decision mode at that moment in time in Toronto, St. Paul's. Things in politics seem to snowball. You know, one thing leads to another thing, and all of a sudden a cabinet minister is out over a $16 glass of orange juice, as a for example, in a past scandal, you know? And one wonders, can you get ahead of the avalanche? Can you stop it from coming down the hill? I think that's pretty impossible to do. But on the other hand, a lot of folks thought a Conservative win in Toronto, St. Paul's last night was also impossible.
Steph, thank you very much as always.
My pleasure, Matt. Have a great day.
And you, Stephanie Levitz, is the Toronto Star's Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief.